So, we are on our second episode of our podcast. Why am I trying to start this journey together group? So, I think in the first episode, we talked about how we all go through um, different stages of life where we feel that perhaps there's a sense of unease, there's a sense of tension about certain things that we used to hold on to, and they no longer are that applicable in the stage of life that where we are in right now, and that gives us a lot of confusion and stress at times. And some of us are working through pretty dark seasons, and where we are learning a lot, and yet we need the help of people to process these things that we are going through. So if I mean, no matter whether you find yourself on the other end of the journey where you feel that you have come out to perhaps a better, a new world, or whether you're still making your way through certain of the traumas and certain of the conditioning that you have accepted before in your past, you're welcome to join us. We are a group of people who would like to journey with each other to see if we can help each other to process and evaluate certain experiences that we are going through, that we can't really put our heads around. And we're not talking about the experiences of the world out there only. We are talking about the experiences of the world that we are in right here, right now. So for this second episode, I was thinking we should talk about consciousness. What keeps floating up? Perhaps there are traumas in your past, repeated cycles of pain and sadness that you are personally dealing with right now. This could be a relationship breakdown. This could be coming to the end of religion in your life. This could be leaving a career, starting a new one. This could be having the very foundation of meaning in your life. Perhaps your families have been there as a form of stable support for all these years, and yet they seem to be distant. Or perhaps you never had a sense of closeness with them to begin with. And yet in all these seasons of trauma, we long for help. I mean, I guess the basic disposition of a child when you're born into this world is to cry. So we do have a cry, and we do have a longing to connect. We do have a longing to bond with another person. And yet so many times we do not find on the other side of the journey someone to actually bond with. And a lot of times we are sucked by the very troubles that we are in, and we are just being sucked downwards, and it's this downward spiral that keeps on going on without finding that person that we actually need. So perhaps, have we even stopped trying to reach out for help? And some of us may have come to a place where we have told ourselves, if we are going to look out to rely on someone, we will not make it. Let's just close our hearts. Let's just cut ourselves off from this idea of reaching out and just help ourselves. And yet how is that working out for us? Because we can try as much as we want to help ourselves, but inside of us we do know that we are relying on people for help. We are relying on what someone else do to offer certain services to us. We are all connected in this thing we call life, in this thing we call the universe. All of us are connected. Your actions affect me, and my actions affect you, and our actions affect people around us, and their actions affect us. So in the midst of all this complexity, are we truly looking for that help? And how are we doing it? What ways have come easy to us, and what ways have seemed difficult to us as we try to reach out for help? Is it trusting people? Is it allowing people into our lives? Is it the defense mechanisms that we have built up so long? Or is it just the nagging sense the gnawing sense that we never know when we will meet someone wrong? Whether we will meet someone who is not able to walk with us, or not able to walk us through this stage of our life who might not have the capacity to walk with us? Are we afraid of making the same mistakes, of meeting the wrong people again and again? And that's why we have decided to just take a step back. Or worse still, we have met people who have betrayed our trust, who have let us down in deep, deep ways that have harmed us at the very depth of our soul. And we have felt neglected, we have felt abused, we have felt uncherished, we have just felt alone, just left alone. Is this where things end? But in the midst of all this, in our consciousness, and even below our consciousness, lies the stories of our lives. And they do keep floating up again and again from time to time. Are we aware of these things? And usually it floats up as annoyance, irritation, a sense of unease, apprehension, a feeling that things are not right. Do we trace what these feelings are trying to tell us? Do we sit with it? Do we believe that these things keep floating up because it is sending us a call to discover the stories about ourselves? How do we deal with this unease as we face them? Do we plunge ourselves deeper into work and so that we can be able to achieve our financial goals, which is a good thing, and yet oftentimes plunging ourselves into work can cause another cycle of hiding and escaping from the sense of pain that we feel so acutely in our souls. We are just busying ourselves in order to forget those things. Do we actually realize that what is gnawing inside of us is telling us something about the world around us, not only about ourselves or about our past, but about the world around us, our culture, our communities, the kind of leaders that we have, the kind of bosses, the kind of parents we had or we have? So many times we just try to dial this sense of apprehension with good news, with positivity, with laughter, or even with casual meet up with acquaintances. And yet, inside of us, I believe if we sit long enough, we do know that this sense of unease is connected deeply to the stories that we have gone through, the stories that shape our lives, the pain, the breakup, the joys, the triumphs, the achievement, the growth in our career, or the crushing defeat of our career. All these moments shape our lives, and have we allowed them to actually float up to our consciousness, and so that we can be aware of how they are in fact controlling us? And who have we shared these things with? Or perhaps the gnawing sense has to do with the kids, the colleagues, the clients, the students. If you're a teacher, how have your students get on your nerves? What do you think they actually need from you? And what do you think you have actually been giving them? So all these things, when they are left unprocessed, they continue to tear us apart on the inside. They continue to make us feel that our only mission is to get through today. And yet, so many times after getting through today, we realize there's tomorrow. And tomorrow, these stories are still there. And unlike popular media or news that tells us to just shut it off, shut it down, get on with it because you're stronger than this, you're better than this, so many meditations and mindfulness exercises push us in the direction of trying to just tell ourselves what we want ourselves to be tomorrow. And yet, if we don't if we don't process and sit with the events that shape our life, we will never be able to build or to construct a better tomorrow, because we will be controlled by the demons of our past. And this is what the social sciences have told us. This is what psychology have repeatedly showed us, that we actually need to realize that our subconsciousness is actually crying out for us to pay attention to the world around us, to ourselves, to the things that shape us, our bosses, our leaders, our parents. What do we feel about them? Whenever I talk to my kids, I realize they can't even form a complete sentence usually about what affects them even if it's just a very basic thing like how was the day at school, or how was the CCA practice that they went to, how was the friend who sat with them through the entire year, how was that classmate. They are tongue tied to be able to explain, and yet oftentimes this reveals a sense of perhaps even tiredness and exhaustion of the soul, where we just don't want to sit long enough to name what is actually bothering us. Or maybe we have named it but no one would listen. That day I was just reading on a post, someone said I'll just forget about telling people some things that are bad because they only want to hear good things. So maybe we are there. Are we listening to the feelings of unease? Are we aware that these are telling us something about ourselves, the world around us, and the people that have shaped us? And maybe my next question for us, even as we think through whether we are having moments where we are actually listening to the trauma that is speaking to us, because it is speaking to us. When we don't resolve, even after we have resolved or processed some things, we are still to be aware that these things are there just below the surface, speaking to us, and we should listen. We should not be controlled by them, but oftentimes we are controlled if we don't listen to what they're trying to tell us about what we have gone through. And usually what they tell us is truer than a lot of narratives that go on that paint to us a picture perfect world or picture perfect society. What our senses tell us sometimes is more accurate about what is going on with the world. For example, the world is an unfair place. For example, the world is a cruel place. These are true things. And that is why our body tells us these things. And yes, we need not retaliate in unforgiveness. We need not retaliate in revenge. We need not disorder the world even further by trying to manipulate it for our own sake. But yet, it is critical we admit that the world is at its heart a very unfair place, a very unjust place. Are we allowing these voices in us to arise, to tell us what message they would actually want to? A lot of times just breathe into your body, breathe into your heart, breathe into your mind, and just ask your body what it wants to tell you today. So if we're not listening to our body, perhaps we are listening to other kinds of wisdom. For example, news, media, books, speakers, leaders, mentors. Where do we go to seek wisdom for every day, for living, for issues? And how are they useful to us? How are we making use of them? Do we actually have a thought process in which we bring this information through a certain filtration system? I mean, if you think of a rainwater being collected in a reservoir and then being filtrated and then being channeled to our homes, if you think of that, how is news and media and the books we read, how are they actually giving us what we need for daily life? How do they become the thing that we can actually use and apply? Is there a process that we apply them to, or are we just randomly allowing ourselves to pick these things up and then acting on it as we deem fit in that certain moment when we feel like that triggers a certain piece of information we read or we have heard about? What is a more wiser way to process information? I mean, every one of us have a different mode of how we look at these things, how we actually process information that comes in. But what is your mode? Do you spend time journaling? Do you spend time just going through it in your mind, the different pieces of information about a certain topic. For example, if you want to know about relationship and communication, do you gather this information and then process through it one by one silently, or do you journal it down, or do you talk it through with a close friend? For example, if you want to know whether you should stay in your home country or migrate, how are you processing it? Whether you want to get married or remain single, whether you want to continue a relationship or to break up, how do we know? We have many pieces of information all around, we have many voices all around, but how do we gather these things such that they provide us true anchors for our soul? How do we evaluate? Do we use the 5W1H to ask ourselves, why is this thing compelling? What is this thing pointing me to? Where is it taking me? Do we ask ourselves these things? And periodically, because if not, then we are controlled by all these pieces of narratives that are coming at us, but we are not exercising a certain pattern of thought that will allow us to understand ourselves more. Why do we believe this person instead of that person? What is causing us to believe this person, for example? When you have multiple advice given from different people, do we prioritize which friends to listen to and why? Do we constantly reevaluate whom we are giving our attention? Or for instance, if we are just going by certain traditional modes of wisdom, for example, if my kids achieve a certain grade in their exam consistently, they are made for life. Who told us this? How true is this? And even if it's true, how much of it is applied rightly and how much of it is applied unhealthily? Do we know? Have we asked ourselves such things? And who will help us in this whole process? Do we have friends who come alongside and say, oh, you have been stressing him out because you've been putting back-to-back tuition over 5 days in the holiday week? Do we have friends that will come to us and say, calm down, take a deep breath, let's go grab some churros. I don't know what's your favorite food, but let's go get some McDonald's maybe, or some Starbucks. Do we have friends who would pull us aside when we're in the frenzy of the rat race? Or for example, when we have this thought like, if I don't get there before others do, I will not survive. How much of this is true? Perhaps there is truth because we have been living in a competitive world at least for millenniums, and that's how human civilization has continued and prevent itself from becoming extinct. And yet, is that the only way to survive? Is that the best way or the better way to survive? Or is there a way that perhaps cultures that are more flourishing have been trying to teach us, or wisdom from even the Jesus tradition, the Jesus story that I myself was from, is trying to teach us that in dying we actually find true life, in serving we actually find true greatness. So perhaps in laying down our time and energy and talent for another person's benefit, for the good of society, we actually create a better society for ourselves in the end. And this is very simple. For example, if the roof above you is not made by hands and a mind that is devoted to make sure that it fulfills its safety requirements, then it's a matter of time before it falls. And no matter how good my podcasting may be, if it falls on me, I am going to be a pancake. Yeah, so we are all connected. Who has been telling us that we are not? Who and why are they telling us that? For what purpose? Is it because of profit agenda? Is it because people want us to think that you can't don't think so much about how your actions affect another, because I'm telling you to do this and I want you to do this for my own agenda, for my own monetary or profit or fame, so that when you do this I will give you some reward in exchange for just doing things based on what I tell you. So don't try to think so much about how your actions affect the larger story. Is there some people whom we are listening to and we may not even know we are listening to them? And these are usually people who have great say or have great power, that they will over our lives. And yet, what are we listening to? And why are we listening to them? So the point is not to listen. The point is not a simple yes or no, whether this is correct or right or wrong, or black or white. But this is to understand why we ourselves come to embrace certain beliefs, and then to reevaluate those processes by which we come to believe something, whether we are thinking clearly or whether we have been clouded by extreme, hunger or poverty or pain or fear, which are rightfully so. These are the drives of human nature for millenniums, and yet at the same time we're at the stage where we can be able to evaluate those drives, because we've been given consciousness, and every time these things arise in our consciousness, we have an opportunity to stop them, to know more about ourselves, the world around us, people that shape us, through these things that we feel. And through these things that we feel, we are able to ask ourselves, where have we been getting wisdom about these things? Not just wisdom on what to do next, but wisdom about what the situation actually is, or what do we call good, or what do we call bad. Who has been giving us and feeding us this wisdom? What are the books that we are reading? Are they life-giving, or perhaps not? So I hope that we will begin to stop in our day and listen to these things that rise just below the surface, that makes us feel uneasy or stressed. Take some deep breaths and ask yourself, what is this thing trying to tell me? Why is the pain there? And therefore we are extending this invitation to everyone who is listening to this, who wants a group where they can feel safe to pause, to reflect, to listen to their own bodies, their own hearts, their own conditioning of their minds, and then journey together, because we need each other to see the blind spots and to be able to hold each other tight as we journey all the way home. Till next time, amen.